Thank you for joining us for this RTA meeting on August 13th. I call this meeting to order at 3:43 in accordance to the governor's ordinance. I unfortunately don't have it in front of me. Let's conduct these meetings virtually so that we can all remain safe within the wake of COVID. We're going to start our meeting doing a call to order. Do you want me to read off the names, David, or just have everybody unmute themselves? Hello?
Can you let her know I have a family?
David?
So we are having the sound difficulties from hearing you. I'm seeing if they can correct that at this moment. So my apologies here. Hang on just a moment.
David, we can hear Tallulah, just so you know. Tallulah, I wonder if it makes sense if we all sort of spoke up so David would know who can be heard, maybe?
Okay, so I'll just do what we've done. I'll read off all of our names, so we just unmute ourselves to say aye or nay all together. Since he can't hear me, put it on the mic. Nathan Spencer.
Here.
Karen Ridge.
Here.
Mike Stevenson.
Here.
Christopher Jones. Daniel Coleman.
Here.
Forrest Cook. I thought I saw Morris.
I did too.
Here. He's somewhere around.
Brian Burnett. I don't think he's on. Joshua Gill.
Here.
Sarah Prado.
Here.
Robert Owens.
Here.
Do we have any our liaison from City Council? Okay. All right, so we're going to jump into the first item of our agenda. Can we go to the? Can y'all hear me? Well, I don't want to start having a problem.
Yes.
Well, not you all, but in the.
There's a lot of feedback that we can hear from the council chambers.
All right, Madam Chair, can you nod if you can hear me? Appreciate you going through the roll call there. I think I got most of that. Part of our issue today is that our sound system, for us to hear you, is having difficulty. So I may have to ask you to repeat something, but we're going to try to make sure that we get everything recorded and move along in an effective way. At this time, what I was going to do is read the COVID-19 update, Madam Chair. If you think that's okay, you can certainly do that, or I can as well. All right, I'll do that. The governor has issued executive orders requiring individuals to remain in their homes except for certain activities, closing many businesses to the public and prohibiting any gatherings which do not comply with its terms. Because of the risk of the public to the public that would arise from continued in-person meetings pursuant to NCGS 166A-19.24. The city is converting Raleigh Transit Authority meetings to a remote electronic format for the duration of the state of emergency. So that obviously for any public that may be watching is the reason for our virtual meeting today. I'm sure that most people are quite aware of that by now, but certainly we want to make sure that that is part of the record as we move forward today. With that, again, it's going to take me a little bit longer transition between items today because we're going to have to make sure that things are set up and that we have the sound correct. But today, as far as the agenda goes, Madam Chair, I was going to request one change if that was okay.
Yes.
All right, that sounds great. So today we were going to change item E. We would like the Transit Authority's endorsement of our LPA. We do have a presentation for this item. This item has not to the town of Cary and their board, and they have endorsed this LPA selection since the majority of it does impact the town of Cary. But again, we'll be presenting this information today. It is going to take me just a moment to bring up since it is queued at the end of our deck. So stand by just a moment and I'll see if I can't get this rolling. So thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a question about the agenda.
Okay.
Can I ask now?
Yeah. I don't know if David can hear you.
Okay.
Andrea, can you hear us?
Okay, what I need is a presentation.
I take it that they can't hear you.
Well, we can hear you. We're working on the presentation.
Well, Karen had a question about the while you all were doing that.
Can I just go ahead and ask it?
Yes, please.
Okay. The question is, I'm not clear. I'm wondering on the update on the CARES Act, if that has anything to do with the public announcement that I received, and maybe other members of the RTA board received too, that the Wake Transit is asking for public input on possible revisions to the Wake Transit plan as a result of decreased revenue and sales tax. And so, which is something I was unaware of until I received, I think it was an email. And I mentioned it to the staff and was told that we would get an update on that today, which I think would be great because apparently public comment is going on, I believe, through the end of August. So I thought it would be helpful for us to know a little bit more about what's going on with possible changes to the Wake Transit Plan, which doesn't surprise me since obviously we've got less sales tax revenue coming in. So I was wondering if that's on the agenda today.
So we do have information. Campo is here today to talk about the update to the Wake Transit Plan through 2030. We do not have specific information today regarding changes associated with the Wake Plan implementation and budgets that may be available for mid-year release, but certainly we would have that available in September, I think, by that time.
Yeah, I just really meant more about the public input. I think I also saw...
And Mr. Brett Martin with Campo, when we get that item, will be happy to provide any additional information about timing of when those budget decisions would be available.
Excuse me.
Madam Chair, were you able to hear me? Very good. Again, we're having problems hearing y'all. It sounds like your audio is good to the general public that may be watching, but unfortunately within the chambers here, we are having difficulty. So my apologies for kind of having a lot of lag in between the items here, because it's taken me a bit to figure out exactly what's happening. So we should have that presentation open here in just a moment, and I'm going to check on its status now. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I thought we had put some items into committee last month, but I don't see any committee reports.
Well, July, we did take a break. So nothing
Okay.
we voted on taking a hiatus in July.
We put them in June. But
The last meeting,
Anyway.
the last meeting we had was in June to vote to put things to committee, but we went on hiatus in July. So I don't believe there were any committee meetings, but were there any of the committee chairs, Michael, Karen, were there any committee meetings to report back to?
I was told by staff that we weren't having committee meetings this month because I asked at the beginning of August if we were having a marketing committee meeting, and I was told no committee meetings this month.
Hasn't met at all.
Nathan?
I said route hasn't met at all. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm gonna.
Either as finance and policy.
There were no committee meetings. Can we have a report of the items that were passed to committee?
It sounded like there was a question regarding committees. We have not had committees to date, but due to the longevity of the ongoing pandemic, that would be something that we would need to start soon. There were some items that have been referred in the past that we will have to catch up on, and we certainly have several new items as well.
So when are we planning to restart hosting our committee meetings? I understand they'll have to be held virtually, but
Start those as early as September. We'll need to work with our IT department and determine exactly how those would need to be conducted. Again, all of our meetings are public meetings, so we just need to have full participation as we go through those.
Good afternoon. My name is Mila Vega. I'm with the City of Raleigh Transportation Department Transit Division, and I will provide an update on the Western Boulevard, Western Corridor locally preferred alternative. And I will try to, I was notified that there is some lag between the slides advancing, so I'll try to switch slides maybe a little bit ahead of time so then they catch up with my presentation. The slide that you are seeing right now, program overview, we always start our presentations with this information, just trying to provide a quick recap of where the entire WAKE BRT program is. As you know, we are working on 4 separate projects. New Bern, connecting from downtown Raleigh to New Hope. We have Western and Southern corridors, working on parallel tracks and connecting to town of Garner and town of Cary. And then we have our Northern corridor that will be running up West Street or Capitol Boulevard. So today we are focusing on Western corridor, and we are going to talk about the initial alignment options that were studied and the technical recommendation that was produced to select preferred routing to connect town of Cary to the city of Raleigh, to connect 2 downtowns. When we first started this process through the major investment study, we had 3 main alignments that we were looking at back in 2018. So the portion of alignment from downtown Raleigh to approximately Johns Franklin is the same. We always envision BRT operating along Western Boulevard, but then there are, it forks out as you are heading towards the town of Cary, and there are the options that we looked at, Chapel Hill, Chatham, and Cary Town Boulevard. As we worked a little bit more on these alignments, another variation was added to the Cary Town option. So instead of going along Walnut Street and connecting to downtown Cary, another option was added to go up Maynard and then Chatham to connect it into downtown Cary. So these are 4 different options that we looked at through our technical analysis. We worked on this, well, first of all, definition of the locally preferred alternative for this project required multi-jurisdictional coordination. As you know, the City of Raleigh is the project sponsor, but the project will be connecting to another jurisdiction, which is the town of Cary. So to make sure that we are coordinating, we had each municipality really almost take somewhat, not a completely independent, but somewhat independent approach to figuring out what is the best alignment for each municipality and how it aligns with their overall long-term goals and transportation plans, land use plans, and then through coordination and ongoing discussion, come up with the recommendation for the preferred routing that will ultimately connect the 2 pieces for Cary and Raleigh. This recommendation is based on prior planning work. I mentioned the major investment study. We also worked on the Western Boulevard Corridor Study. City of Raleigh led that planning and development department. And one of the deliverables of that study is the recommendation for the preferred routing for the BRT corridor. As you might remember, we kicked it off back in November of 2018 and had public engagement. So public engagement and public feedback and information that we collected through surveys was also integrated into this technical recommendation that you are seeing today. So again, just a quick recap, 2016 is when all 4 BRT corridors within the system were identified. 2018 is when we conducted major investment study and looked at some alignment options. 2019 is where we really started to look closer at selecting the preferred alignment. And today, 2020, is when we have our technical recommendation for your consideration. And as David pointed out, this will be move into the City of Raleigh Council consent agenda on August 18th. This information has been already reviewed and endorsed. This recommendation was endorsed by the town of Cary within their jurisdiction, and I'm hoping the slides caught up. So right now you should be seeing a map that shows that preferred alignment that goes from downtown Raleigh, and as I said, there was always only one option going along Western Boulevard, going through Western Extension and up Maynard and into Cary, utilizing Chatham Street. You can see the dashed line for the Western Extension, this project has been in the adopted Campo Metropolitan Transportation Plan 2045 for a long time. It's also included in the City of Raleigh Comprehensive Plan, but I'll get into that a little bit more. I mentioned we did public engagement in 2010. I will not go all the way back to 2016 with a recap in public engagement, what the results were, but I'll go back as far as 2018, couple years back. So these alignments were presented to the public several times during the MIS and Western Boulevard Corridor Study. And I've highlighted some stats. We did in-person meetings and surveys. And during the MIS, Major Investment Study, there was a strong preference for the alignment that included Cary Town Boulevard. There were also Chatham Street received about 13% votes. Chapel Hill 27 and 21% had no preference for the way the corridor would connect. And then in 2019, we had a very large kickoff event at the NC State campus, sent out 13,000 mailers to town of Cary and City of Raleigh residents within a quarter mile of every single alignment that was identified, including the Maynard option that was included in this technical work. 150 people attended in person. The survey was completed by 430 people. And in the survey, we really try to ask, where do people want to connect? What are the key destinations that people feel is important to connect with this high-capacity transit system? And again, there was reinforcement for the Cary Town Center. For the Cary Town Center as the destination along Cary Town Boulevard and Maynard Road because of the important future land use projects that within the town of Cary. I did mention the Western Extension, so you can see this little section of dashed line. This project is a transportation project that has been approved and included in both City of Raleigh Transportation Plan and Capital Area MPO Long Range Transportation Plan as well. And because it's a long-standing transportation project, the city has been working actively on acquiring right-of-way. At this point, we have more than 90% of the right-of-way acquired. So really using this alignment for BRT is trying to take advantage of the existing plan to build a roadway project and basically add in BRT to it so we can be strategic and maximize that investment that city has been making for the last couple of decades. I did mention that the town of Cary, and you see a map right now of just the town of Cary segment and different alignment options. The town of Cary Council received this information on July 23rd, and they discussed and endorsed their support for the alignment that goes along Cary Town Boulevard, up Maynard, and utilizing Chatham for the last stretch of the system within the town of Cary jurisdiction. So again, the town of Cary made recommendation and endorsed the segment within their alignment from Raleigh to Cary, and same will be considered by the City of Raleigh Council. So I already mentioned that. So this is the a recommended alignment again, and I already talked about the existing right-of-way for the Western Extension. And before I wrap it up and open up for questions, we have some next steps, and these are the next steps, not necessarily only related to Western Boulevard. As you know, we had another initiative, equitable development around transit, that has been ongoing for the last 12 months or so. The final report is published. If you access this presentation and click on the final report, that blue letters, it will take you to the website, or you can go to the project website and access the report from there. Western Boulevard Corridor Study, we are working on public engagement, virtual public engagement. It's planned to launch on August 31st, and it will last through October 5th with pre-recorded presentation, modules, potentially live Q&A session, surveys. So really trying to report on the progress and continue communication with the public. And finally, now that we are getting very close to the getting that locally preferred alternative, that final alignment, we can then start working on design and submit this project into the federal project development phase beginning fall of 2020. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Chair, this is Nathan Spencer. Can I ask some questions? I appreciate it. I was hoping that this might come to the route committee so that we could do this process in more of a sort of a work session versus the full board, because I know people have hard stops. The question, I have a question based on the route that was picked was preferred by Kerry. What's the benefit of running it in sort of that circuitous manner up, and is it ridership, or is it where we're hitting? But also, what's the distance difference between that versus going straight, and the travel time difference?
So there's not a, I'll kind of answer your last question and I'll go to the first one. There's not a significant difference in travel time. So it's slightly longer, but on the scale of the entire project, understanding that probably 1 or 2 extra minutes, it's not really a big deal for somebody who might be on the bus all the way from downtown Raleigh to downtown Cary. That extra 2 minutes is not really making a significant difference. There was a benefit. So when the town of Cary was looking at making their selection, they set some criteria in place, like, does this, which alignment connects better to transit-dependent population? Which alignment connects better to different destinations that people want to go to? Which alignment can connect to and open up more land use and economic development opportunities? And they also looked at their existing long-term land use plans and tried to figure out which alignment aligns better with their plans. And there was a process of elimination, but at the end there were 2 options that were reviewed, either Walnut or Maynard, and Walnut was just not aligned, and the plans for Walnut they were not aligned with land use that the town of Cary would like to see along BRT corridor, like transit-oriented development.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's very helpful.
Hi, Mila. It's Michael Stevenson. I had a similar question. This alignment looks longer than the other ones, so it must be more expensive. Was there a comparison of projected costs, and if they align with the budget projections?
There was a very high level comparison back when we did MIS, and again, until you start designing and start really do the survey and start gathering all the data, you have very general estimate of what it would look like. But so by elimination, for example, Chatham, the entire alignment of Chatham was limited in economic development opportunities. There were some other considerations for Chapel Hill because it was not really one of them. It was not really floating to the top during public engagement. But overall price, if you look at going along Walnut and doing the extension or going along Maynard and doing the extension, it's pretty much, it's very close. I mean, I'm not going to say it's identical. And again, the biggest consideration would be the extension if we didn't have the right-of-way, almost 90%, over 90% right-of-way already in place. So that would be a big consideration. But since the city already was preparing for the last 2 decades to build a roadway project, that is actually beneficial because the investment was already made into that location.
So the funding for the Western Boulevard Extension Road is separate from the BRT funding?
That was being funded before the Wake Transit Plan came online. There are a couple of parcels that are left to that would need to be acquired, and that could be part of the Wake Transit Plan and the federal project. But the benefit of economic development and what it opens up outweighs, considerations of maybe a larger project.
This is Karen. I have a question for Mila. I remember, well, a couple things. I'm assuming this alignment that the Carytown Council approved will have a stop for the soccer park. And also, there's been a lot of opportunity and changes going on with the Carytown Center. I don't actually know at this point what development is happening there, but were these important things for the town council in terms of destinations?
I'm sorry, I cannot hear your audio.
Very light. Her mic is very low.
Karen, your mic is probably very low. Can somebody else repeat that question to me? Maybe Nathan? I can't hear the question that came from Karen. I'm sorry.
If it's considered, like some of the stopping at the soccer stadium or Carytown Center, she was saying that she doesn't know what or how much development is going on there, and if some of these were some of the decisions, key points to decisions to make when they made that route. Do you mind pulling the route up for us again with the options while we discuss it?
I don't know. Sorry, I'm really having a hard time. I pick up certain words, but I'm not really getting the whole question that you are trying to ask. I apologize.
Why did they choose this particular route? Were there stops on the route?
Why did they choose this particular route?
Right. Were there stops on this route that were more important than the other routes? Like, what were their driving forces for the route they chose?
So the stops, and again, just a reminder, these stops are not locked in. Once we will go into design, we will review the stops, we'll put them back out for public feedback, and just to make sure that, if we need to move or add or subtract. So the stops are not finalized. So when the town of Cary, when they were making their decision, they looked again at access to transit-dependent population. They looked at basically populations along all of these alignments, and consultants developed that analysis. They looked at opportunities for economic development. They did look at their own land use plans and made sure that the BRT route that is selected aligns with the plan. So I'm assuming that land use plans also include potential future developments and some maybe sites that could redevelop.
So, David, when we met today, you were mentioning that a lot of the space they were using, space that we already owned. Is that the space along this western extension that you were referring to?
The right of way along the western extension, which is the city's already acquired.
Yeah, yes. So the dashed line that you are seeing on the map, that is the right of way that the city has been acquiring to complete that connection. So that line is the transportation project, like a roadway project that has been on the books for the last 2 decades. So the city has been working on getting that right of way to be able to, while there's nothing that's constructed there right now, the space that is needed to construct is owned by the city, so we can actually go ahead and build it.
So, okay, so could that be a part of the reason why we're choosing that line starts cutting before we get to Cary? If we look at the map
For the city
again,
of Raleigh, it's obviously beneficial. I mean, for us, it's on, the decision is not so dramatic because 90% of the city of Raleigh alignment stays on the same road. There's no deviation, but it is beneficial to take advantage of the investment that was already made. If there will be a roadway project and it opens up more opportunities for economic development, it is one of the considerations why it's another, point towards that alignment, why it makes it beneficial selection. So yes, so having that as something that the city has been investing actively is one of the considerations. Not the only one. With LPA selection, there is not one answer. It's a range of criteria that we're looking at, but it's one of them for sure.
so I assume that the equitable development around transit document helped with this in some way. Is that the case? Is that the case?
So equitable development around transit, yes. It looked at all four BRT and it actually looked at all the different alignments. It did not presuppose that one will be selected over another, but it only looked at the alignments within the City of Raleigh jurisdiction because it's a City of Raleigh project. So the document is...
I'm sorry, let me further ask the question. So if it was used to do this, can you explain to us, at least I'm curious to know, what the average income is of the neighborhoods that each alternative route would have cut through?
I have that information. I don't have this off the top of my head. I can bring that back to the board if you are interested in seeing that.
Because I'm trying to figure out if if we're being asked to vote on this. We haven't had an opportunity to have any committee meetings around this to talk about the cost of it. We have questions about the financing of it. We have questions about how the routes were picked and why they were chosen. And I know I have questions about the same questions I've had about the BRT from the gate. So if we're in the presentation, you mentioned the equitable development around transit. So I would assume that if he was researching that, he also researched average income of residents at the time and the historical picture of that. So I'm curious just to know the neighborhood we're cutting that they're deciding to move, because that, like I said, that line cuts before we get to Cary. So that line is still on Go Raleigh Transit portion of it before we get to Go Cary, from the Hillsborough to the new location that they're using to go towards the Cary Town Center. So I'm just curious about the same thing we've been talking about, which is how are the people that are living in that area going to be impacted by it?
So I think that
we own that land, so that's a smaller part of the impact of the route that we're choosing because we own the land, the right of way, excuse me, for that. But I'm wondering about everything else around that space.
So when the consultants looked at the alignments, obviously we want to make sure that the route, I don't have the exact numbers, but I know that the route that we are recommending provides better connections to transit-dependent population. And we have a general idea of who our customers are. So that was one of the considerations both for the city of Raleigh and the town of Cary, to make sure that we are putting that investment to connect to transit-dependent population. And I know where you probably, well, I don't want to presuppose, but I know you are very interested in the equitable development around transit. For policies, it will be taken to council to enact a blueprint for station area planning, how we will advance and create land use plans for each station along the corridor. We are starting that process for New Bern right now. You've heard probably that we received a grant from FTA to really start focusing and creating tailored plans along the New Bern corridor. Now that we have an alignment, it opens up an opportunity for us to go and leverage additional federal funding to do that very detailed and precise planning for the western alignment. But the goal of transit is to make sure that we connect to either existing ridership or to demographics that need transit. Before we try to go to a larger audience and try to get riders, we want to make sure that we provide necessary transportation and mobility services to transit-dependent population. That's always a core of the transit project.
Oh, those are my questions. Did we have an opportunity to see this presentation or have access to this before the meeting?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah, I was wondering if we have this presentation to us prior to today.
You have not had the LPA presentation, but you received updates as part of the overall program update. Whenever I talked about BRT program, I talked about Western Boulevard Corridor study, what's happening with the Southern Corridor, what's happening with New Bern, to make sure I'm not isolating any projects. So you've heard about the study. I know many of you attended the kickoff in November of 2019 when we started this process. So this is not the first time you're hearing about the Western Boulevard Corridor study. And the deliverable was always...
I'm sorry. I'm not asking is this the first time we've heard of it. I'm saying have we, before us voting on this today, this presentation with the maps and the thing that you're asking us to vote on, did we have access to this to look at prior? Has this been sent out to us?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure. Are you saying this presentation was sent out?
No, if you got they had the presentation for today, and this is the first time. Did they get the presentation?
When was it sent?
Okay, so yeah,
this is the first time you've seen this presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this is a copy, yeah. Yeah, you have seen the versions of it with different alignments, but for the LPA recommendation, this is the first time you've seen this particular presentation. Yeah, and the town of Cary received that same, for the first time they received this presentation on July 23rd.
The town of Cary got it in July?
July 23rd, they received the staff recommendation and they endorsed their selection for the LPA.
Madam Chair, we need to get committee back up and running.
Yes, we do. Okay, so I know that this is an action item they're wanting us to vote on whether or not we are in agreement with the town of Cary as to the route that they're choosing. I mean, it's up to the board. I know I do have questions on the portion of it that's in Raleigh that goes into Cary, and I don't think as much as we've discussed this, I think that there are some areas we have not discussed about that. But this does have to, is moving forward, and it will be going to City Council in about a week. So are there any further questions to Mila or the group as far as that's concerned?
This is Karen, Madam Chair, if you can hear me. While Mila wasn't able to answer my questions because my microphone's probably a problem, I do want to point out that there have been various public input sessions, not recently, but we were alerted to them, so we could have gone to them and had some input that way. But at the same time, I agree this certainly should have gone through the root committee. So we've had some opportunity for input, but not in a formal way. So and the fact, but I will also point out the fact that Cary Town Council has endorsed this. I don't know what the vote was. Mila, if you can hear me, was the vote unanimous by the Cary Town Council? I would like to know that.
I'm pretty sure it was unanimous. Yes, it was unanimous. I have Brett Martin here with Campo. Give me thumbs up. It was unanimous.
Okay.
Hi, this is Michael. Entity can make a decision that has financial and performance impacts on the total system. And I mean, again, when I just look at it, it looks circuitous. It looks longer than it needs to be. Nothing we're looking at in Raleigh is anything resembling that. And so I agree, I would have to have more answers, and I would not be ready to vote in favor of it today, personally.
This is Nathan Spencer. I really like the idea that it hits more transit dependence and economic development. Those things are key. But I do want to have a better understanding of the route and how we're sort of building that in. Only because I don't want us to be, I understand it's only a minute or two add-on for if you're going from Raleigh all the way to Cary, but I think that most riders would only be doing portions. So I still have a fair number of questions that I'd want to dig in, and I'd love to see this report with the numbers and the data attached to it.
I have a question about the portion that is circuitous. It is in Cary. How much say would we, as the city of Raleigh, have in directing the city of Cary on their route?
Can we pull up the map with the 3 options on it again, please, Mila?
That's on, I'm sorry, did you ask to bring up the map? Andrea is working on that, but Joshua asked a question about how much authority do we have to direct Town of Cary. We don't have authority to direct Town of Cary about what's happening within their jurisdiction. So they make their selection, we can make our selection and figure out how to connect the dots, but the city of Raleigh has no jurisdiction in the Town of Cary. So they made their choice.
Look at the map. Thank you, Mila. Look at the map. On the dotted line to the left of it is Cary. To the right of it is Raleigh. So the circuitous part, that part that starts that process, is in Raleigh. So we kind of share that. And that Go Raleigh piece is the part that we're also discussing, like trying to figure out, like, why is, because the whole route works together. So we're trying to figure out why that piece is cutting down towards Cary Town Center and that spotted line. Now, they were saying that some of that could be because we own the right-of-way in this spotted line area. So it seems like...
So my understanding of the yellow line is that through all of their public input, the yellow line wasn't... they said the phrase didn't rise to the top. So that was like the bottom desired route from the public's standpoint. Then the red line, as someone who lives in the area, and I've just driven along that, it's right next to the train track. There's nothing there. There's no housing. I mean, there is some housing on the southern side, but on the northern side, you can't even access the line from the northern side for that entire stretch that it's in Raleigh. So again, this is just one person's opinion. But I think that for me, the southern part, the green part that's in Raleigh, makes sense because it actually now provides ridership for the BRT along land that the city of Raleigh has purchased already. It has a bigger catchment area for riders.
Yep, I think that a part of the reason why that route was chosen is because that spotted line is land already purchased, so it's a sunk cost. So in that way, it may cover the cost of the extension, the longer ride as far as cost is concerned than the orange line.
line with dashed, and the dashed section is within the city of Raleigh, and then shortly after it picks up town of Cary jurisdiction. But yes, the right-of-way is pretty much already there, and we can use that as our matching for the grant, because we will be putting our right-of-way that the city owns towards the future application if we are going to move forward with this alignment. So that's another benefit for us to leverage that investment that the city was making for a different project, but there's nothing that says we cannot take advantage of it for BRT. And Joshua, you were correct about the other lines. There's significant challenge there with access, predominantly due to railroad, and especially the Chatham section is pretty much, you cannot access it on the northern side, so there will not be anything there. It's going to be a BRT, one-sided BRT, essentially.
Mila, could I ask a clarifying question? It's Michael Stevenson. Could you hear me?
Yeah.
So are we only voting on the alignment within the Raleigh city limits? Because you said we have no authority, no jurisdiction whatsoever in the town of Cary.
Yes, so you will be voting on the City of Raleigh alignment portion, and even though the council, yes, the City of, you will be voting in the jurisdiction, your board will be, this board will be voting for the City of Raleigh.
Part only.
Mila, this is Nathan Spencer. Aren't we the project sponsors for this whole entire project, though, at City of Raleigh?
Repeat that?
This is Nathan Spencer. Aren't we the project for that?
No, we are the project sponsor to, basically we are assigned by the Wake Transit Plan to design it and to construct it, to deliver the project. We are not assigned to tell the other municipality what to do within their jurisdiction.
Got it, understood, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Yeah, this is Sarah Prado. I have a question about it. So if I'm trying to like go off that image that we were just shown with the map, I'm showing that the BRT would go mostly on Western Boulevard. Is that what I was seeing correctly?
Can we have the map brought back up and kept up, please, in the discussion?
So my concern is that there are currently probably like 3 or 4 GO triangle buses that do that route on that Raleigh portion and stop at all those same stops. So I'm wondering what the difference, like what the I know that the frequency is going to be increased with the BRT, but why are we focusing on an area that's already targeted by 3 or 4 buses that are going on that same passage is basically my question.
I was trying to get as much as I could. Why I would put in additional transit service along Western Corridor where there's already a lot of service. So there is service because there is demand, but BRT, and I think you mentioned Go Triangle. So Go Triangle is a different kind of service. They focus a lot on commuters. So they run some frequencies early in the morning to get people them home, and then maybe a trip or 2 in the midday to just for those trips that people might need to make. So it's a commuter service that it's a different model. What BRT does, it basically provides you 10 to 15 minute frequency all day long from 4 a.m. to midnight. So you never have to worry about, okay, I'm going to go out there and my bus will arrive maybe in the next hour or in half an hour. You go out there, you don't even really need to get a schedule. You just know your bus run until midnight, whether it's Monday or Saturday or Sunday. That's another thing about traditional transit model is there's a steep drop in service on the weekends, and a lot of times we know that students need to access libraries on the weekends. People need to go to work, restaurants and special service industry. They still need to go to work on the weekends. Commuter service is more focused on traditional office style work, but there are other shifts out there that might not be necessarily aligning well. So BRT really provides that reliable service where you don't have to worry about the change schedule between weekdays and weekends, your bus will maybe run till 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. It runs till midnight. It starts very, very early, so you can get reliable transportation all the time. Also, because we are focusing on at least 50% dedicated infrastructure, so basically BRT has its own lane. It's not fighting with traffic. There's more reliability means more trust in the service, so people don't feel like, okay, I'm going to get on this bus, but then it's going to get stuck in traffic, and maybe I'm going to be late, so maybe I need to catch an earlier bus. There's more precision on the and accuracy in the on-time performance with dedicated infrastructure, because again, you don't have to compete with buses and with other cars and maybe other buses.
Madam Chair, I have to excuse myself. It's Michael Stevenson.
Thanks for joining us, Michael.
Thank you.
Be safe. Well, I have a question to the authority. Can we take a vote on how many people feel comfortable voting on this? And then we can just move forward with whoever wants to vote. I'm fine if everybody does. I do have questions. I don't think us hosting meetings in this way without committee meetings is the most effective way to govern the RTA. And it puts us in this position where we're kind of having to vote and cram a lot of discussion in a short amount of time. And a lot of us have pressing schedules. I don't necessarily know if our voting on this is going to really matter one way or the other going to city council, to be honest, especially since the Cary Township has already voted to approve it. I'm sure whether we endorse this or not, which is basically what this is, it will still be passed through with city council. So that's why I'm asking the board if you all feel like this is something you want to vote on with the information that we've gotten, the amount of time that we've had it. I would be lying if I said I'm not a little bothered by the fact that the Cary Township had this back on the 20-something of July, and this is our first time seeing the presentation to make this decision on it. But I'm definitely willing to go with whichever direction the authority is willing to go in.
This is Nathan Spencer. As route committee chair, my concerns all fit into where Cary jurisdiction, and I kind of wish that we had more of a place within before it went over to Cary. So I'm willing to vote on this only because we don't have, I don't feel like we have any options at this point with it. And I just want to continue learning more about what's going to happen towards the end of this when we start developing.
I agree with that. Is there an opportunity, David, where if we vote on this in agreement with the Township of Cary, that we still have an opportunity to reenact our committees and have as this goes on? I know that there's still progression in the design and development and the planning of it. Is there opportunity somewhere in there on the Raleigh side of this if we find, flaws or things that we would like to address on our end?
So I think I got that question. So as we move forward with the selection of an LPA, all that is the beginning of a process that says that you have identified two ends, a technology, which is a bus, and you've got a general routing between those two ends. So certainly there's a lot of work that needs to be done from NEPA to public participation. To, again, this is just the very beginning. All this does is allows us to present an item to FTA, which can have future funding eligibility. So certainly we can bring this to committee and we can talk about where we're at currently and answer any questions that you have. And certainly we'll work on reinstating those committees in September. We'll look at for what those alternatives are. Again, it is a larger production when we're in council chambers and providing this in a public environment. But we'll certainly try to make sure that we reinstate those for our September committees leading up to the September RTA meeting.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments before we move to vote?
Hey, it's Karen again. Madam Chair and David, I think even if we vote to proceed with this, and I'm inclined to do that, just given where Cary Town Council is and all that, and there have been public input meetings and the staff's been working on, and I don't want to hold it up. I really would like for us to send a message to our own city council that, we know COVID has held everything up, and I got to believe other committees are dealing with the same, technological problems and inability to meet and have conversations in person about the things that we're being asked to provide input on. So if we could send a message to the city council that, we're voting with hesitation because we're not meeting in committees, we're not getting full information, and I'm not blaming anybody. We gotta figure this out so we can be more useful and more informed.
Understood, and we can relay anything that the board would like for us to relay.
All right, so we'll go ahead with the motion if there's not any questions. This is an action item, so it needs to be a motion needs to be placed for us to approve the route that Cary chose, which is, do we have a name for the option that they chose?
You can, it's the Western Extension option.
Western Extension option. So would anybody like to make a motion approve this?
I'll make a motion to approve the Western Extension of the BRT.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and properly second to approve the Western Extension option of the Cary Western Boulevard BRT. All in favor? I would do all in favor.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, Danny.
I have been muted out, and I can't even call in. I'm on an ancillary phone now. This is ridiculous. And it's not the council that's putting us in a trick. I think it's the administration is putting us in this trick.
Is he still there? Madam Chair, I'm not sure if he's still there.
I don't think so. I believe we have quorum without him and Michael. Yes. So it's been moved and properly seconded. Is he texting anyone? Okay, so he's gonna. I guess he wants to. He said take a roll call. So anyway, I'm gonna do that. That's because the microphone is weird. Let me pull back up the. All right, I'm going to do the roll call to get everybody's vote. Nathan Spencer,
I vote aye.
Karen Ridge,
I vote aye.
Michael is gone, Christopher's not here, Danny Coleman, if you can hear me. I don't think he can. Morris Cook,
Aye.
Joshua Gill,
I vote aye.
and I will vote aye as well. So it's been moved and properly seconded. The motion passes that we are approving and siding with Cary Township for their selection of the Western Corridor extension of the Western Corridor BRT. We cannot hear you, David.
Stand by.
There you are. There you are.
All right. I was saying we will also follow the board's guidance related to committees, and we'll be following up with correspondence, making sure that we have the appropriate items under the correct committees as we move into September.
Thank you for that. So it looks like the next item on the agenda is the first item, which is the Wake Transit Vision Plan update.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we have Mr. Brett Martin with the Capital Area MPO. Brett oversees all of the activities with TPAC and the Wake Transit Plan, does an outstanding job, and so he's going to provide us an update on the plan update. Thank you.
All right, can you see and hear me? Great. I'd like to thank City of Raleigh staff for inviting me to discuss our update to the Wake County Transit Plan. I'm Brett Martin, Wake Transit Program Manager with the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. And I'm here to provide you with a brief overview of the Wake Transit Plan's ongoing implementation goals, our current financial circumstances, our approach to our current phase of public and stakeholder engagement, and next steps for completing the plan update. And I am going to wait for the slides to get back up before I proceed. Oh, I am a short guy. Okay. Okay. Can we advance the slide? Am I able to drive the slides up here? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Do I just press this button on this mouse, or where is it on the keyboard? Okay. Okay. All right. Sorry for that. So the Wake County Transit Plan, adopted in 2016, currently spans a 10-year period from 2018 through 2027. Extensive outreach conducted over an 18-month period back in 2014, 2015 helped set the overarching investment goals for the 10-year vision known as the 4 Big Moves. These include connecting the region, connecting all Wake County communities, frequent and reliable urban mobility, and enhanced access to transit. In our first few years of implementation, we've made a lot of progress toward advancing each of these big moves, including implementing more regional and express bus service and continued planning for commuter rail, connecting more communities with bus service, increased frequency in all-day service, and more routes, and continued planning and design for bus rapid transit, and extended service hours and days on existing routes, implementation of new routes, The Wake County Transit Plan is updated every 4 years to revisit certain project delivery assumptions. We can stay apprised of our investment goals as we continue implementation. This first update to the plan will extend the planning horizon through 2030. It's hurricane season, so I really like this analogy, but a major component of our ongoing planning process and for this Wake County Transit Plan update is financial forecasting. Financial forecasting is very similar to hurricane forecasting in that there is a cone of uncertainty that represents a range within which our financial situation is most likely to fall. The closer we are in time, the more certainty we have, and the further in time, the less certainty we have. Our forecast is based on what we know and educated guesses about known unknowns, or what we know we don't know. In very early 2020, our forecast results indicated there was a good chance there would be capacity for new investment in the additional years being added to the planning horizon beyond what the 2016 plan committed. But one factor that can severely upend the forecast is the presence of unknown unknowns, or what we don't know that we don't know. Unknown unknowns can result in abrupt, significant changes in the trajectory of a forecast. The economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic certainly fall within this category. And the example that you see that I've used here with the maps is Hurricane Florence 2 years ago. When it was coming for us, it was supposed to be a Category 4 that came right up through Raleigh. And of course, as it approached, the forecast just 2 days later had it kind of changing direction. And so that's the example that you see there. When we build our forecast, we look at a range from very conservative to optimistic assumptions. And while there are many inputs and variables that go into our forecasting, assumptions for things like revenue collections, project costs, and level of federal financial participation dominate the ultimate direction of our overall financial wherewithal. A comparison of our current financial scenarios to those we generated in early 2020 reveals an anticipated reduction of between $107 million and $248 million in sales tax collections over the next 10 years. And this has put us in a position of needing to reprioritize and ultimately reschedule the host of investments we have already committed to deliver and use revenue collections from the 3 years to be added to the planning horizon to rebalance those assumed investments. We need to adjust our strategic phasing of investments to be in sync with updated revenue assumptions. To inform our next steps, we are currently engaging the public to solicit input on investment priorities. Our stakeholder engagement period to engage our plan update stakeholder group will follow our public engagement period in mid-September. One thing that is very important to note with our approach to the plan update moving forward and for our public messaging is that because we haven't identified a likelihood for capacity for new investment, we are really still working to implement the 4 big moves associated with the original 2016 Wake Transit Plan. So with this engagement effort, we are working to understand the public's priorities within a set of already programmed projects. And the solicitation tool we are using as a survey geared toward helping us understand travel priorities that tie to future projects in our multi-year investment strategy. For the public to respond to various investment trade-offs that have competing objectives, such as coverage versus ridership, speed versus access, regional service versus local service, etc. And one thing I'm really happy to report today is that the survey has been live. The survey that we're using has been live for about a week and 2 or 3 days, and we've already had 856 responses. So we've been doing really well, and we've been getting a lot of feedback so far on that. So I want to just give you an idea of where we are in our overall schedule to update the Wake Transit Plan. We just finished up with our look at financial capacity in June and are heading into the next step, which is reprioritizing investments, which we're kind of doing right now with the public engagement and stakeholder engagement that we're doing. But that will take us through October. And that will then lead into a reprogramming exercise in November before we select a final investment alternative by the end of the year. And from there, we will continue to finalize the plan update so that there will be a new Wake Transit Plan that has that horizon that I mentioned. And that is all that I have for you on this today, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So how much money is in the pot?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
I put that last slide up and out. What's the financial capacity that you had in June?
So that was our determination of what our financial circumstances are that we should work with for planning purposes to go ahead to extend the horizon of the Wake Transit Plan and go ahead and complete the plan. And
how much money? What was financial capacity, Brett?
Say that again. Sorry.
What is the financial capacity?
Are you looking for a dollar figure?
Well, I don't know how else you describe finance.
I'm trying to figure. I'm not sure I understand the question.
I think
financial capacity is
how much money we have or don't have. I mean, that's the issue. Is financial capacity means we have less money, right?
Okay, so let me go back. I can go back in the slideshow. I mentioned earlier that when we compare our results of our financial scenarios from early 2020, before we were accounting for the economic impacts of the pandemic, versus now that we are, we're basically planning for a reduction between $107 million and $248 million for the next 10 years, so through 2030. That, to give you an idea of our overall investment outlay for the Wake Transit Plan, when it was originally adopted in 2016, if we take all of the sales tax money, all of the vehicle registration tax money, rental vehicle tax rental vehicle tax money and all of that, and add the federal money that we planned to leverage with that, it resulted in a $1.8 billion plan. Okay. What I shared with you today is what is the reduction in sales tax funding, which is the biggest part of the local funding that we have supporting the plan. Typically, in any given year leading up to FY20, we were running in the $100 million. We're typically running in the $100 million per year range in sales tax collections. So to give you an idea, you can think of that as, okay, over a 10-year period, that would equate to about $1 billion.
So your sales tax projections are 10% less.
Well, there's a range. There's a cone of uncertainty where we've made a number of different. We have a number of different scenarios, as I mentioned. We have very conservative to optimistic, and so the very conservative end within that cone of uncertainty has a lot deeper cuts, a lot deeper reductions assumed in sales tax collections. Whereas if you move to the optimistic end of the scenarios, they're not as deep. The way we've been tracking so far, because we do have sales tax collections data from March, April, and May, we are actually more toward the optimistic side of that range of scenarios so far. In March, our collections came in at about 12% less than they came in 2019. In April, it was about 25% less, and in May, it's been about 15% less. So if we move toward the very conservative end of our range of scenarios, we originally, for that, we assumed that we could have up to 40% reduction year over year in April, May, and so forth. So for the more optimistic scenarios, we're actually tracking more on that side than we are the very conservative. But in any case, no matter which direction you go, it's really putting us in a position of having to use 3 additional years of sales tax collections and local revenue collections to rebalance what we already have programmed.
Thank you, but can you give us the Finance Committee a thorough report? You can look at it when we meet in September.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
I'm not going through this again.
Yeah, I can send this to the Finance Committee. Yeah, it's about the Finance Committee.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brett, this is Karen Ringe. I have a couple of questions. The first one is, in terms of asking input from the public, I understand you're asking people again about the trade-offs that we asked when we developed the Wake Transit Plan. But at this juncture, if the assumption is we're going to have less money, are we working on the assumption that we need to scale back how much we do, or is it more about how long it's going to take to do everything? Because you just mentioned like an additional 3 years before we get all the sales tax revenue. So that's the one question. And then the second question is, you also said you're going to be meeting with stakeholders. Who is that? And is our board one of the stakeholders?
Yeah. So to the first question, the approach that we're taking is, back in 2016, I don't want to say, a lot of people use the word promise, but I'll use it here, but I don't necessarily agree with it being a promise. We promised the public a plan that had had a certain investment vision detailed in the plan. And so we're still committed to delivering that plan. What's changing is the timeline on which we can actually deliver it. The original plan was 10 years. It said we'll have all of these things done in 10 years. Based on our financial projections today, and that are being tempered or being impacted by the economic uncertainty associated with the pandemic, we can't deliver all of that in 10 years. We've also, as we've gone along, gotten better information about actual project costs than what we originally had when we put together the Wake Transit Plan. A lot of those project costs, the costs that we're assuming for those projects are higher than what the Wake Transit Plan originally assumed. Now, that's not because costs necessarily went up. It's because what we're assuming for projects to be delivered are a little bit different than how they were assumed in the original Wake Transit Plan. You saw a little bit of that today with the BRT corridors. So there's, that's the idea is that we're not, if we have to scale back, we will scale back. If we're forced, there is, we're continuing to deliver the plan, and we're still committed to deliver that plan. It's just our timeline has had to change to do it. So I hope that answers your first question. To your second question, yes, set targeted stakeholder group list that we developed. Much of it was a revival of the stakeholder group that convened for the original Wake Transit Plan development back in 2014, 2015. So a lot of the same representative people from the organizations that were involved then are involved on the stakeholder group now. I think, Mr. Spencer, you're on the stakeholder group, and I'm not sure who else on RTA is, but that's ultimately kind of the approach that we've taken with that. The stakeholder, now, who do we consider stakeholders? We consider a lot more than just what we have assigned on that targeted group as stakeholders. But when we interact with stakeholders, we have to keep the group at a manageable size so that we can get meaningful input from them and in an environment where they can have discussions with each other about each of their interests. So that's kind of the direction we've gone with this.
This is Nathan Spencer. My question pertains to your input collection. You've gotten 800 some odd responses. How demographically equal to Wake County are they, and how spread out are they?
I think I caught most of that. Are you asking about the results that we've gotten so far, how much that mirrors the demographics of the county?
Correct.
Okay. So far, actually, we've done pretty well getting non-white participants compared to a lot of other survey efforts. I don't have the actual percentages for that yet right now in front of me. Compared to a lot of other survey and we've gotten the results. If we look at the demographic spread, we're getting white participation. We're getting pretty good low-income participation. We're getting pretty equal participation in terms of gender or gender identity between male and female. I don't know if I've looked at those who have because we do have a question in there about how often do you ride the bus. How much participation we're getting from frequent riders versus just occasional riders versus people who don't ride at all. Last time I checked on that, and so all I checked today was the number was 856 responses. I did check on some of that stuff last week when we had about half that, and when we had about half that, about like 400 and something responses, we were actually getting a good amount of participation. Actually, most of the participation we were getting were those who at least rode the bus occasionally.
Thank you.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So Andrea just reminded me, and she's correct. We've been monitoring those as we go, and we're starting to see some holes and voids in populations that we're reaching, for which we need to do more targeted outreach. One of those is youth populations. We're not getting a lot of participation from youth populations, and we think that we can correct that by using our Youth Go Pass contact list that Go Triangle uses to communicate with that group. So that's something that we'll work on.
This is Karen Ringe again. In terms of the public input, one thing I did want, Brett, if you would please share with your staff that the ads that were in the News and Observer with the QR code, I tried repeatedly to use that and it did not work. I even had my teenage daughter make sure I was doing it right, and she said, "Mom, it's not." So you might tell your staff that that was a waste of money because the QR code was so tiny on the printed ad. But secondly, I'm wondering, I know this is probably mixing pots of money, but the Wake Transit Plan is investing in a number of consultants, starting with the New Bern Avenue in public output, and we've hired some consultants who've got sub-consultants who are based in the community, and I'm wondering if you're using them in any way to help expand community outreach, because we're already paying them to do that, and it seems like this would be a great opportunity to use their expertise.
So I think I got most of that. We're not. One of the issues that we run into with that is, the city of Raleigh has its consultants that it has a contract with to do certain things. Campo and Go Triangle have a consultant that it has contracts with to do certain things. If we could try to do as much leveraging as possible of resources as we can, but we can't ask the city of Raleigh's consultants to do things for us under this other scope of work for which we have a contract with another consultant. So there's a little bit of that, but yeah, as much as possible that we can leverage.
But But is it that big of a deal to ask our current consultants, even if they're for Raleigh, if Raleigh, since they're part of the Wake Transit Plan, could ask their consultants to share that opportunity for public outreach with the public? Because again, it's all, New Bern Avenue is part of the Wake Transit Plan, and it just seems like, you know, send out some social media or something. It doesn't seem like it would be that big of a reach. I don't know.
Yeah, David over here just mentioned that. Yeah, that's something the city can do. I agree with you. I mean, so you're familiar with the TPAC, Karen. The TPAC has a whole subcommittee, a public engagement and communications subcommittee, that part of its purpose is to talk about those things. How do we leverage this opportunity for these other opportunities, so that there can be a synergy that's created for getting out doing outreach, getting the message out, making sure that the message associated with one effort versus another is that they're well synchronized and they don't conflict with one another and so forth. So we do have the TPAC does have a subcommittee that works on those types of things. Any other questions for me? If you haven't, I'd love for everybody on the RTA to take the survey, if you haven't already. It's available, and Karen, I'm sorry about the QR code. That was something that Go Triangle worked on, and so I'm going to have to. This is kind of the engagement side of this is a tag team effort between Campo and Go Triangle. So I'm going to have to circle back with them to see what the issue with that is. But would it hurt you to go on the Go Forward webpage and access the survey there?
No, it wouldn't. I just wanted you to know that since they spent all that money, it would have been good if they figured out that the QR code wasn't working. But anyhow, maybe could somebody send our RTA board the link for the survey, and maybe we could send it out to our own lists.
Okay. David said he can do that. All right. I'm not hearing any other questions, so I will move on. Thank you for the time today, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you so much, Brett, for presenting. All right, the next item on the agenda is the Together Raleigh Bus Shelter update and add on to with David Walker.
Good evening. This is David Walker with the Transportation Department Transit Division. I'm sure you're all aware that the ART on the shelter program began in 2018. Let's see. I'm trying to move the slide forward. Whoop. There we go. All right, so the Art on the Shelter program started in 2018 with about a dozen shelters receiving artwork. Late in 2019, we received a request from Together Raleigh to do a second set. The Transit Authority Marketing Committee reviewed that, approved it. We reviewed methodologies for selection of shelter sites early in 2020, and those sites have been selected by the Together Raleigh folks, and we found out today that those next 10 sites will actually be installed starting next week. We currently our communications and marketing group has a social media campaign promoting the first round of shelter sites. We had some professional photography done, or the Together Raleigh Arts program did. And so we're using those, and you can see those on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Due to the success of the Shelter Art program, Together Raleigh has asked to actually expand this second round of shelter locations and to do an additional 10 sites. They received such a good selection of artists on their call for artists that they're hoping to be able to pull another 10 artists from that first or that second procurement, and then they'll also use the same set of shelters that we've already provided because we gave them a very good supply of sites. If they do request a few additional sites, we'll use those same methodologies that were discussed in the marketing committee earlier this year to provide additional sites. So this program has been very successful by the Together Raleigh Art program, and they're excited to expand this second round of shelter sites. This chart shows the locations and map. The red dots on the map are the round 1 locations, and the blue dots show the round 2 sites that were selected already in the initial set for round 2. And this is just a quick shot of some of the photos that were taken that we're using in our social media campaign right now promoting this program. So if you have questions, we'll be glad to answer those. If not, we'll move on. We've got 2 more agenda items, and we've been told we need to be out of this room in the next 10 minutes, so we need to try to wrap up by 5:30 if we can. Are there any questions? No? All right, I'll turn it over to Morgan Simmons.
I'm not Morgan, but very quickly, I just wanted to say we're going to be have 2 items remaining, the project management 5310 plan, and then a couple of cooperative agreements. My apologies. I'm so used to that. That's the first time I've ever done that, that I actually didn't even realize it. But so today, both of those items are on your agenda as information. We do want to provide some introductory information, but due to some time constraints, there is another meeting in here at 6, and because of it does take a while to get this room set up. We've always had a meeting in here at 6, but we haven't had the lengthy setup requirements in this room prior to the pandemic. But Morgan's going to provide some information on these items. And certainly you'll have the entire month, and then we'll be bringing these back in September. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Morgan. So thank you, Morgan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully, can you hear me? Can put a thumbs up. Thank you. Perfect. All right. Okay. Like David mentioned, I am providing you information about the project management plan, and we'll be more than happy to provide the presentation for this as well, just as it's a quick synopsis of what you're seeing. But this is a new agenda item, and this is a current existing document that was approved by the RTA in 2015, so it's not brand new to the RTA. Next. Thank you. Just to give you a little bit of a heads up, the PMP is a federally required document. It helps us to administer our Section 5310 funding. And for those that aren't familiar with that funding source, that funding does allow us to provide for projects and services that support our elderly and our disabled communities. The PMP, it outlines how that funding is administered, and in it, it talks about eligible applicants, eligible projects, and just overall, just the process in which we must administer and oversee that funding source. This is something that is developed in coordination with city staff, Campo staff, as well as that commentary from local stakeholders. Reasons for this update is because we've had a lot of changes happen since 2015. We are currently under a new federal transportation guidance. We're not under MAP 21 anymore, but now the FAST Act. This also must align with our 2019 and our 2020 update of the locally coordinated human service public transit plan. That's a mouthful. But this is a document that has been endorsed by this authority both in 2019 and in 2020. So you all are familiar with that. And these two documents, the PMP as well as the human service plan, they must align. So that's why when that one gets updated, we try our very best to make sure the other one is updated as well. In addition, with our last grant cycle, we gained a lot of feedback from stakeholders and eligible applicants on how we can improve that process. So we included a lot of that information in this updated plan. Next slide. And this is just an overview of the timeline in which the PMP process has been underway. The 2015, it was approved, the current edition was approved in 2015. 2019 received a lot of feedback from applicants and the scoring committee. We did our draft and work session with Campbell and Go Raleigh staff from fall of last year going into spring of this year. Then COVID happened, and this is why we're bringing it to the board today in order to kind of get it approved and endorsed. This is something that would be approved by our RTA board and endorsed by Campo. So you will have your initial review process, and we'll bring this back in September for your final approval and Campo's final endorsement in September as well. A part of this process is also a comment period. So that comment period will start on tomorrow and end on September 10th, which is the anticipated date for the RTA to meet, and we'll close that at noon so that any comments that I've received at that point, we'll bring it to the board. And as mentioned, this is just the information only, just to introduce you to this particular this item that will be hopefully an action item in September. Open to any questions that you may have. Oh, sorry, got just reminded the full document is in your agenda. So if you have any questions about the document or the memo that's associated with the document, please feel free to let me know.
Thank you for your presentation, Morgan.
All right, no problem. All right, we can move on to the next agenda item.
So the agenda that I have doesn't have any more items. No, wait. Memorandum of agreements. Is that it?
It would be D, the memorandum of agreements. Yeah. The roles and responsibilities agreements. Yes. And this is a quick one as well. Trying to keep to time. You can go to the slide. All right, so this is another quick agenda item. I'm bringing forth the memorandum of agreements for Rolesville, Garner, and Knightdale. As many of you all are familiar, we did restart services in each of these municipalities as of October of last year. And as a part of the Wake Transit Plan's effort to ensure just collaborative coordination between service providers, being City of Raleigh and Go Raleigh, and local municipalities that are outside of the City of Raleigh or outside of our municipality, the TPAC process subcommittee developed a template agreement in order to just kind of really outline everybody's roles and responsibilities in that process. This is a document that was developed, like I said, under the process subcommittee, which does include service providers as well as representatives from municipalities. Along with just that coordination, city staff did also reach out even further with Garner, Knightdale, and Roseville staff to ensure that the context of the agreement was to everybody's pleasing. So we are bringing this non-financial agreement to the board for your consideration, hopefully in September. And as I mentioned, this is an information-only item for consideration in September. Those agreements are in your packet.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And, oh, sorry, if you all have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
All right, so it doesn't seem like we have.
All right, thank you.
For your presentation. I know that we're on a time crunch, so we have 3 weeks left. Are there any remarks or last-minute information from the authority?
This is Nathan Spencer. I let the board know that Brian Burnett and myself met with Garner to talk about the Amazon distribution center, maybe getting some service out there.
Anybody else? Thank you for that. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to excuse myself. I have to head out.
Thank you. Thank you for joining our meeting today. I'm going to wrap up now anyway, so for joining us.
Take
Little one
care.
has joined us now too.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you all. If there are no additional comments, RTA or remarks from the RTA, I do look forward to us starting our committee meetings in September so we can be a more effective governing authority. But until that time, I ask that everybody stay safe and socially distant, well, physically distant, but socially close. And I'll call this meeting to order. I'll adjourn this meeting at 5:28 p.m.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.